Each of us has a story to tell. Our own story. Mine began when I was born. I was 11 weeks premature. All the doctors and midwives repeatedly told my parents to prepare for the worst. That there was a high chance I wouldn't survive the night. My mum never believed them though. Well, I never figured out, but she knew something. She was right. I did survive. I had to spend the next few weeks in hospital, of course, but my mum never left my side. I was obviously too young to know, but I've always had a subconscious impression that she was there. Being an only child was hard, but thankfully growing up I had a lot of friends. My mum couldn't have any more children, so there were times where she'd spoil me. My dad kept her in check most times though. He didn't want me growing up to be a brat. I'm not, well, hopefully I'm not. As I got older, my mum would often tell me the story of my birth. Whenever I asked her how she knew I'd survive, she'd just smile at me and simply say she knew I was meant for something more. That was I supposed to impact someone's life. Of course, I don't know if that's true, but I'd like to think it could be. I suppose everyone hopes they'll impact someone's life at some point. Especially if it's in a good way. I know I did with my mum, but she passed away with cancer, but I don't think that's what she meant. So now 12 years on, and I'm still living in the same area. Probably always will if I'm honest. I hear people complaining at the time about the area and the city as a whole. They're always saying they can't wait to leave, but I don't see the need to move. I was born here, go to school here, with all my friends. When I'm older, I'll more likely get a job around here as well. My plans are that I'll eventually marry, get a house, have a few of my own kids, finally die here. Although, that won't be for a good few years yet, at least 80. Like my dad always used to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Speaking of my dad, I saw him earlier, going into his local pub, the Fox and Hound. I guess it'll be my local when I'm older. Maybe my dad will even take me for my first drink when I'm old enough. He used to have a few drinks there with his friends while Mum was home cooking us a Sunday roast dinner. Now that she's gone, he sometimes stays longer and rarely cooks them. He's always saying her dinners were the best. He's right, to be fair. He wasn't that far away, so I called out to him just to let him know where I was going. But I don't think he heard me, either that or he's still angry with me because of my exam results. I shouted his name a few times, but my dad could be quite stubborn when he wants to be. I keep telling him that they're just mock exams. I'll do better in my actual exams. He didn't want to listen though. He just kept ranting on about how I needed to do well at school. I have big plans for what I want to do with my life. I want to be a doctor and help people. My dad, being who he is, thinks it's all a pipe dream, of course. Since my mum died, it's all I've ever wanted. I made a promise to her on her deathbed. I would make something of myself, and I intend to keep it. Prove her right and make her proud. I've always been a bit of a dreamer, and my mum frequently told me to follow my dreams, even if that meant not working in a warehouse like my dad does. I love my dad, don't get me wrong, but I want better for myself, and I know my mum did too. After hanging out with my friends for a few hours, I'll go home, have dinner, and study for a few exams. They aren't for another 2 weeks, but I'm determined to prove my dad wrong. That's where I'm off to now, my best mate's house. We first met at reception at school. We've been friends ever since. I'm going to take the shortcut through the park that we regularly use to get to each other's houses. I'll get there and back quicker. The park is just past the row of shops near our house. Opposite the post office, I see my English teacher, Miss Cooper, waiting at the bus stop across the road. I think she's going into town. It's a bright, clear, sunny day with the sun glinting off the plexiglass screen of the bus shelter. The positions of the sun is causing its reflection to bounce off in my direction. Instinctively, I shield my eyes against the glare. I think a cloud must be partly obscuring it though, as it's not blinding me as it first thought. I call over to her. After a few times she doesn't hear me, too intent on zipping up her big fluffy coat. It's one of the strange things about this place I'll never understand. The people always wearing big heavy coats, even when it's a beautiful sunny day. Couple more times calling her name and she looks in my direction and waves. I quickly glance at my watch and notice the time. Decide to jog a little to make up for some lost time. Getting to the park, I pass the play area. Idly take a peek. It's oddly quiet for the time of day. Not stopping to ponder that particular mystery, I reach the entrance to the alleyway. Still in a hurry to get there, I run down in between two outlying houses. Comes out on a street, so I'll be there in no time. He lives across the street and just past an old people's home. Exiting the alley, I slow down to a steady, fast-paced walk. Cars are parked either side on the pavement, almost the length of the road. From behind me I begin to hear the sound of screeching sirens. As they get louder, I see someone leaving the old people's home. I wouldn't think anything about it, but the person's dressed in what appears to be a clown costume. There's something all over his costume, though. His mask. A chill runs down my spine as a sudden thought fills me with dread. Even from a distance I get the sense that it's blood. There's something wrong about this clown guy. The way he's moving seems a little wooden. He climbs into a nearby car and hastily drives off. In the opposite direction as he approaches, sirens. As I watch him careen down the usually quiet road when a high-pitched cackle forces my attention back to the retirement home. I turn slowly, frightened by the cascading images flooding my mind. My fear of what I'll see makes me hesitate to look, but I'm curious. It's just that a little bit more compelling. Sat like an eager bird of prey on a concrete column is sat another clown. He's watching the other leave. This one is peculiar compared to the other one though. His costume looks older. The colours not as bright as the other clowns, and he appears to be wearing some form of headgear. It looks like a hat with 3 short floppy protrusions. I realise then it's not a clown but a jester. He stops laughing abruptly and his body becomes noticeably stiffer, as though he's instantly becoming aware that he's being watched. Slowly but surely he turns his head in my direction, stopping only when he sees me. Focusing on his malign features, I can see his entire expression change. 1 minute he's excited, almost euphoric with joy, and the next he's gleefully temperament. He's been shed like a snake's skin to be replaced with one of anger and vengeful hatred. With terrifying speed he abandons his solitary pedestal and charges at me. In a flurry of frenzied stuttering movements, he lurches across the road till he's standing in front of me. His raged, chapped lips pulled back, revealing rows of blood-stained, razor-sharp teeth. Now that he's next to me, I see that it was indeed a jester's hat that adorned his oddly shaped head. His colour had long since faded from all filth and grime that covered it. The 3 hanging appendages bounced and jingled as he tilted his head this way and that, as he glared at me with murderous intent. Little bells tingling with each swish. The green paint round his lips cracks as the angry grimace becomes permanent. His bulbous red nose almost destroyed his non-comical appearance. Almost. It's only the violent intensity behind his deep-set yellow eyes that attest to his true intentions. Whatever happened to me hasn't inhibited my senses. His rotten, ferreted breath stings my nostrils. How can you see me? Nobody can see me unless I wish it. He roared at me in a high-pitched, rasping tone. Maybe I wasn't high-pitched enough. With such blinding speed that I am unable to react, He reaches out and clamps a dirty, clawed hand around my throat. An instant later, he relinquishes his grasp and squeals in agonizing pain. He glares down at his hand, drool pooling at the corners of his mouth, fury and hatred in bloodshot yellow eyes as he stares at the offending appendages from betraying him. I stand there unsure of what to say. I can see my fear reflected in his pierced yellow eyes. My silence seems to rile him up more, and he begins to circle me. His whole body is still twitching and stuttering as though his body keeps pausing between movements. I can hear him breathing in deep, raged breaths. I can hear the tinkle of boughs coming from the wooden object in his hand. Coming back round to face me, he tilts his head, puzzled. "Whatever you are, stay out of my game. You may be a boy, but if you ruin my fun, I'll do what I did to her." He squealed. Spittle rained down on his cackled slabs of the pavement. Looking at the wooden stick in his hand, it's then I realise it's a woman's head on a stick. With one last demented cackle, he disappears, leaving a surprising chill in the sun-soaked air. The hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. As the seconds draw and the warmth begins to return to the air, the chill ebbs away from my like receding waves. Confusion over the bizarre encounter has begun, clouding my thoughts to the point that I absentmindedly walk out in the middle of the road, continue my journey to my friends. Bewildered by the unfathomable confrontation, I forgot to look both ways until I'm halfway across the street. The sound of a rapidly approaching car from the left snaps me out of my mystified reverie. I turn in the car's direction, too late. I quickly throw up my arms in a futile effort to protect myself from the inevitable harm just as the car impacts me. When nothing happens, I slowly open my eyes and look in the opposite direction and watch, perplexed, as the car continues on its journey undisturbed. Baffled as to the ever-increasing series of strange events, I hear myself mumble. "That's strange. The last time that happened, it hurt a lot more." The significance of my recent event unexpectedly became clear at the moment. My father not hearing me. People wearing winter clothes in summer. The strange encounter with the jester. I was dead. When or how long ago it happened, I was uncertain. But when the jester touched me and drew back from me, in obvious pain, it answered some of the multitude of questions swirling around my head. Maybe my mother was at least half right. Maybe my birth wasn't my time to die. Things happen for a reason. I've always believed that. My reason, my purpose, wasn't in my life, but in my death. I knew nothing of the evil of that jester, but maybe I was the only one that could stop it. That was my purpose. That was how I would have an impact on the other people's lives, by saving them from it. Its rage, its hatred, its damnation. That was only one of the 11 stories in my friend's book called Blind Spot. I did a review on it after I read it, because I did buy it, I did read it, I promise. And this was my review of the book. Amazing introduction to Sheut-Ren-Ka and Elijah Frost. Unputdownable. If you're a fan of horror, gore and blood-curdling suspense, you will not be disappointed. The pace and rhythm Elijah writes with fit perfectly with Sheut-Ren-Ka's perfectly, making this a team I can't wait to see more of. I love the fact the stories were intertwined with each other, Sheut-Ren-Ka masterfully puppeteering in the shadows.